Good Friday afternoon. It seems like it's been a long time. It's been almost 4 weeks, Brian. I know that that's hard for you to believe since we've done a show.
There's been this gaping void in my life
I know.
for the last month, and I haven't known how to fill it.
And-
But
and
now,
you-
finally,
you're
I'm
whole
back
again.
at peace. I'm back at peace.
We want to thank our sponsors who stick with us whether we're on the air or not. It's been great. Triple X, our good friends Kerry and Greg Ayersman on the hill, but on the level of Purdue tradition since 1929. John Basham and the folks at Basham Rental now renting for 2016-17. And of course, Hilton Garden Inn, Christy Kuntz and the folks down there when tomorrow's a big day, stay at HGI Tonight, and State Farm agent Trent Johnson at trentismyagent.com. Brian,
Yes.
It seems like just Purdue Butler tomorrow, and actually Purdue Vanderbilt on Tuesday. A lot of build-up for this. I mean, maybe it's because the Boilermakers have been off for a week, but a lot of anticipation. Obviously, when you have an 11-0 team going against another team that's only lost one game and is ranked in the top 20, it's going to be a huge game tomorrow at Bankers Life.
Yeah, I think it's kind of proving ground time for Purdue in the sense that, they haven't played a ranked opponent yet. People want to know how good Purdue is. I think Purdue to this point has done everything you can possibly ask of them in the big picture and the little details in terms of some of the questions people had about Purdue coming into this season. But I don't think they've faced a great team yet. Butler's a really good team, a really good team. It's really going to put a lot of stress on Purdue defensively. I think that's Purdue's vulnerability right now, even though their numbers tell a very different story. I don't think the Florida game gets enough credit for what kind of test that was for Purdue. I don't think the Pitt game gets enough credit either. But at the same time, neither of those games were a top 25 opponent, a really high-profile national stage sort of game. This will be. Vanderbilt coming after it will be as well. I think, like I said, I think Purdue's questions right now lie defensively more than anywhere else, and I think these are two teams that can really, really score, and I think it's going to be a great challenge for Purdue, and we're going to learn a lot about Purdue in terms of, we know they're good, but are they elite?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and I would tend to agree with you. Look at Michigan State beats Florida at home by 5 points. I think New Mexico and ODU are pretty good basketball teams too, and Purdue had to struggle to some extent to beat New Mexico by double digits. It definitely had to struggle to do that. So I agree with you. I think it's going to be interesting in terms of Butler. It always seems it goes back to 1998, a year after Brian was born, that Purdue has beaten Butler. I'd like to say a year after I was born, but no, they have a team that just finds ways to bug the heck out of you if you're the opposition. I mean, you got Kellen Dunham's a guy that scored 25 points against Purdue 2 years ago. They have an inside game that doesn't impress you. Was it Tyler Weidman's their tallest guy at 6'8", but what makes them difficult, do you think?
Skill. I mean, they have a lot of guys who can shoot, a lot of guys who can score. When you look at this matchup for Purdue defensively, Purdue's got a lot of things to worry about. Keelan Martin's a really good scorer. Roosevelt Jones can really get to the basket. Purdue might want to let him shoot threes and try to make him earn it at the free throw line, but they have to keep him out of the lane. Obviously, Kellen Dunham is very dangerous. They're going to have to make sure they know where he is at all times. Tyler Lewis is a very good point guard. You don't want Tyler Weidman to get loose either and steal points from you around the basket. You would think that won't happen, but I think the biggest thing for Purdue is they have to keep Butler out of transition. Can't give them open threes. Can't give them easy looks.
Tyler Lewis, a former McDonald's All-American transfer from North Carolina State. They also, Keelan Martin has played very well for them as well. He has been hot. And you go back and look at Roosevelt Jones, 6'4". That's all he is. And he gets rebound after rebound, plays extremely well inside, and does a lot of little things that make life miserable. I've been able to watch him in person the last 2 or 3 years. He's been terrific to watch.
Just a really good basketball player. The thing with Roosevelt Jones is he can really get to the basket, really get in the lane. Part of the reason Purdue's numbers look so good on defense, and in turn Purdue's been good on defense in terms of preventing opponents from scoring, which is obviously all that matters, is obviously the size Purdue has. If Roosevelt Jones or whoever it is, Tyler Lewis, whoever, gets in the lane, obviously they've not seen anything like Isaac Haas. They've not seen anything like A.J. Hammonds to this point in their schedule. Caleb Swanigan's a big physical presence. And when you've got those big guys breathing down your neck as an opponent, it takes a lot of pressure off Purdue defensively because it makes it very difficult to make shots. You can get shots against Purdue right now, But the more important part is making shots, and it's hard to make shots against Purdue right now, in part because of that size.
A question that had been asked about what will be the next, will there be a next line of, not cuts is not the right word, but paring down that lineup? I mean, is Purdue where it kind of naturally is right now with Klein, kind of being on maybe the last of the group in terms of minutes played, but do you expect any more paring down of the rotation? Do you think that still is in play, or do you think that that's just, we're going to see what we're going to see here?
Well, I think when you look at the non-conference schedule at this point, the minutes have been distributed such that I think it's like 10 guys over 14 minutes. But keep in mind, Rafael Davis missed 4 games, A.J.
Yeah.
Hammond's missed 2, so there's an asterisk there too in terms of how
absolutely.
those things lay out.
Yep.
Right now, if you need to cut it down from 10, the only guy I can see having his minutes cut would be Ryan Klein, because there are going to be nights where he's going to have a siren on his head defensively, where opponents are going to go after him, like they did in Florida, like they did in a lot of other games this season, and he just might not be a guy you can play against certain opponents. But other than that, I really don't see anybody Purdue is going to just not play as much as they did before. What's kind of interesting is last year, Painter cut down his rotation around this time a year ago, and Purdue got better because of it. That was not because of the number of players involved as much as it was the specific players involved. Purdue took some younger guys off the floor out of more prominent roles, and that made them better defensively. Played John Octius and Rafael Davis more. This is not that kind of situation. I can see Purdue continuing to play 9 guys 15 minutes or more a game from here on out. I really don't see, other than Klein, like we talked about, I don't see anybody superfluous in there right now.
Ryan Klein has been terrific in spots, certainly, and the role he's played at this point in time to come in, again, Pitt game being the one we're talking about, just coming in and really making the difference in some ways between winning and losing just by the fact that he hit the shots he did. I know A.J. Hammond's had an unbelievable game that day, but this is a guy that you love to have in your back pocket if you're Matt Painter, and that's sometimes those rosters you talk about going 10 or 11 and being able to go that extra bit can make a big difference because you just never know if everybody's going to be there throughout the entire season.
We talked a lot in the offseason about shooting and how Purdue would be a better shooting team. Well, look past the percentage. Their percentage isn't as good as maybe some people thought it would be. It's not all that much better than I think they're up 36, 37%. I don't even remember.
37, yeah.
But when you look at the threat it poses, when you look at the balance to what Purdue does, just because people have to respect those shooters, that's really important. On top of the dynamic you have, where you have 3 different guys who on any given night can change a game by making a couple in a row, and 3 different guys have done that. Kendall Stevens against Old Dominion when Old Dominion got within 7 in the second half. Dakota Mathias made 2 in a row against Florida that turned that game on its side. Huge shots, the biggest shot of the game. Ryan Klein makes 4 in a row in the second half against Pitt, wins Purdue that game. So you have 3 different guys now who have, I don't want to say they won those games because Purdue probably would have beaten Old Dominion without those shots Stevens made. Almost certainly would have.
Yeah.
Florida, Purdue still would have been, right there. I don't know if they would have won at Pitt without Ryan Klein.
Not the way that game was going,
who profoundly changed games by going on runs of shot making. And the fact you have 3 guys who can capable of doing that sort of thing really makes Purdue dangerous.
In our green room, which is actually about 10 feet to our side, Danny Anthrop and Anthony Brown getting prepped by Stacy Clarity for at least 40 minutes of good grilling going on. They'll probably would be willing to talk some hoops as well, but obviously get your questions ready for those guys. You can also ask us questions as well on this show. It is a chat room, and we seem to, at times, apparently you like to hear us talk because we haven't had as many questions of late, or maybe we're giving all the answers. I don't know.
I talk too much.
Football recruiting, we're going to move on to that subject, and obviously the Boilermakers get 4 guys that will be enrolling on January the 11th, which will be the start of semester here. Some interesting developments there, but this is a work in progress in terms of finishing out this class. We've talked all along, this is a small class for Coach Darrell Hazel, and as the guys will be talking about too, coming up, things that need to be done to be able to turn this around. They at least have gotten some positions that they've needed to get here in the last little bit with the 4 guys that are coming to campus.
Yeah, when you look at the 4 guys who signed on Wednesday, each one of them fills or was signed in hopes they can fill
Yeah.
a very specific need. They were signed to address something Purdue needs urgently. The only high school kid in the early class, Jack Wager. Purdue needs some speed on offense, needs some versatility. He can play running back, he can play the slot, he can play wide receiver. They need somebody to replace Danny over here.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he can do that right away, but he's that style of player, and that's something Purdue needs on offense, is a little bit more speed, a little more big play punch, probably. Kamal Hardy, the cornerback, obviously Purdue loses Frankie Williams, Anthony Brown, who's sitting right by us here. Two guys with a lot of experience. Maybe not a whole lot of known commodities ready to step in behind them, so Purdue needed some instant impact help at corner. He'll be here in the spring. He's an older guy. Obviously, it's hoped that he can come in and start in the best case scenario right away. If not, at least give them another experienced option. Jalen Neal, the offensive tackle from Arizona, that kind of
6'7",
fell in their
three
laps
bills,
on
yeah.
Wednesday, is a large human being, and Purdue needs offensive tackles. David Hedlund's gone. Cameron Sturman may, we're speculating here, have to move to center to replace Robert Kugler. So obviously there's a needed offensive tackle. Wanted an older guy to compete for a starting job. At the very least, he provides depth. The other one being,
the fourth of the four.
yes, Austin Larkin,
Yeah, there
the
you go.
defensive
Thank you.
end slash rush end. Purdue needs a pass rush. Purdue needs some guys that they know we don't have to blitz to get pressure. They need some guys who one-on-one every now and then can get to the quarterback by themselves. That's where Austin Larkin fits in. So 4 things Purdue needs, one guy for each need right there in the early class. But there's still a lot of things they need to
Address
fill before February.
And Daryl Hazel's talked about the fact that they, obviously it's a small class, but they'll have potentially a couple more weekends in January where they'll have guys in, or is it still early to tell how that will play?
Yeah.
Obviously, they have had their 2
they've
big
got-
weekends in December.
I think they're at 14 right now total, and we think they've got at least a couple more scholarships, so they'll bring in a bunch of guys in January too to finish things off. The other part of it is they've got to hold on to what they have, and that's been a pretty significant adventure over the years. I think we have Purdue for 13 decommitments in the last 3 recruiting classes. So holding on to guys isn't always a given either.
Yeah.
So you have a couple to fill right now, but you might have even more to that if there's any sort of movement in what they have now.
It's interesting because a quarterback has come back on the table in terms of football recruiting, and yet maybe a little bit of a late in terms of looking after guy. Do you see a junior college as a possibility there, or do you see maybe that if they find the right guy, Daryl Hazel will bite on that? How do you look at that?
Well, first off, you have to get somebody to play,
Yeah.
or who can play. You don't want to sign a quarterback and then need him to play and then realize he's not good. So the most important thing is you get somebody you feel
Player,
can
yeah.
help you. It would make a lot of sense if you can get a guy who can play from the junior college ranks, because as of right now, if they lose an upperclassman from that position, everybody knows who we're talking about
Yeah.
here, then you're left with a sophomore and a redshirt freshman as your 2 scholarship quarterbacks. It would help to have some chronological age in that group. It would help to balance out your scholarships a little bit to have an upperclassman in that group. And typically, obviously, being older guys, there's a certain maturity there, there's a certain seasoning there that can be valuable. But you have to get the right guy. You have to get somebody who can play. You have to get somebody who will be a positive influence. So if Purdue wants to add a quarterback, it would make some sense to go the junior college route if you can get the right guy. The other part of it, too, is high school recruiting with quarterbacks. Those guys commit right away. All the good ones commit right away. So I don't know who you can get right now from the high school ranks who's going to be a potential impact player for you.
It's a great trivia question. Who's the only, at least since you've been covering recruiting, who's the only junior college transfer quarterback they've got?
David
Edgerton, and that's right, because I was thinking Mike Seagard, but he wasn't. He was
Michigan,
Michigan. He was a true freshman who transferred out a couple of years into the process. Yes, David Edgerton, because they were so sure about Drew Brees, they had to get, as Joe Tiller always says.
Recruited at JUCO, yep.
And David Edgerton was a pretty good backup, though didn't get to see a lot of playing time except for in mop-up roles during his time in West Lafayette. You look back at what needs to happen there in trying to round out this class. Daryl Hazel talked about the fact that he really, he obviously trying to sell this program. When you haven't won as much as you would have liked over the last 3 years, you still have a lot of opportunity for guys to play. That should be something that they ought to be able to sell and sitting in the living room of these kids.
Yeah, obviously opportunity. Yeah, I got to be really careful with that too, though.
Yeah.
But because when you sell this is all about you, your opportunity right away, you're appealing sometimes to a guy's inner selfishness. So you have to be really careful to not get a guy who just thinks he's going to walk in here.
Yeah.
And then when things go sideways on him, it doesn't work out like he thought it might, then things don't turn out well. But obviously, Purdue can go out and say, look, we've got this spot, this spot, this spot, this spot. We can upgrade at this spot, this spot, this spot, and this spot because here's how we did last year. And that is certainly appealing. The number one thing guys want, typically maybe more so in basketball than football, is to play. And if you have the opportunity potentially to play pretty early in your career, football, not as much as basketball because of the physical strain involved, that's obviously a pretty big selling point for a lot of guys.
Okay, question on the coordinator search, in which Stacy's been trying to follow, as you have as well. Any ideas of where Daryl Hazel has said he'd like to do it sooner than later, but it's still maybe after the first of the year? Any idea? We don't know.
Stacy wrote a story on it yesterday.
Read the
I think
story.
he wants to maybe talk to some guys last week, going through the vetting process a little deeper this week. I don't think there's any hurry at this point because of the dead period in recruiting. I think you probably want to have it done before Christmas, but it's not a huge deal.
Only got about
if you
2 or
don't.
3 days left. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's not a deal where these guys have to go out and recruit right now anyway, so there really isn't any urgent need. I know fans want to know who it's going to be. I know Daryl Hazel wants to get this established,
Sure.
I'm quite certain, but the most important thing, obviously, is you get the right guy. You don't want to just hire somebody because you need somebody by this date. You want to hire somebody because they're the right guy.
All right. We're going to take a couple-minute break, and we'll bring out. I think it's going to be the lineup. It's A is before B, so Anthrop will be before Brown, I guess, unless they drew lots and Anthony won. I don't know, but I think it'll be Stacy Clarity and Kyle Charters, and Danny Anthrop will give his best 20 minutes of analysis of where he is today, what's ahead for Danny, and of course his fine career at Purdue University as well. So stay tuned, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes on Gold and Black Live.